一个亚太地区的跨国产业文化资产平台。这个平台呢，是以多边的交流、还有资讯共享、还有跨域协作作为精神跟目标。我们希望来推动文化资产区域性和主题性的国际交流合作。长期以来呢，ANIH 我们盘点了亚洲产业文化资产的经典案例，还有名录，也梳理了亚洲产业文化资产的体系还有脉络。而这些学术资讯都可以在 ANIH 网站上看到。此外，还有这个半年期的这个期刊，提供专业的知识分享。每年度的这些论坛，我们也邀集了专家学者，还有青年人齐聚一堂，大家共同来进行传承还有交流的活动，以及各式各样的讲座推广的这些活动，也都在这里发生。平时大家也可以关注 ANIH 的一些 Facebook， 还有 IG， 还有 Twitter， 我们可以了解到全球产业文化资产的最新趋势还有讯息。大家都了解到，现在是一个数位的时代。每一个人呢都可以透过知识型的这个影片来做线上还有线下的自我学习，也因此呢 ，ANIH 的线上学习专区，我们希望用各种的影片，以有趣而且容易了解的方式开出亚洲各国不同文化资产领域的这些佼佼者，还有研究学者他们多年的经验和成果，借由这些无远弗届的网络，把这些知识传播给更多的人。让大家更容易参与，而且乐于学习，让文化资产走进更多人的这个日常生活。我觉得这是一件非常美好的事情。ANIH 这一个系。
Dr. Lin, we can start now.
Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome to join ANIH's international seminars. Today, our topic will be the cultural mapping and the sustainability, the strategic cultural tourism from World Heritage perspectives. My name is Hsiao. I teach in the Department of Architecture, and currently I'm the chair of ANIH and also the board member of TIKI. And ANIH aims to establish an exchange platform for scholars and general public to share their expertise and on the conservation of industrial heritage as well as other type of heritages. And today we are delighted to have three specialists on the cultural mapping and tourism to share their knowledge with us. So the first one will be Professor Johannes Widodo, and would you mind to wave to us? Thank you very much. And our second guest speaker will be Faisal from Malaysia. And our third speaker will be Cheng from Taiwan. Yeah, so they are going to illustrate how cultural mapping can be used as a tool for understanding the value of cultural heritage and the management of sustainable tourism and also conservation of historical townscapes in Tainan. I think it is extremely important issue for us, especially for nowadays, to solving the conflict between the heritage conservation and the urban development. So the first one, let's welcome our first guest is Professor Dr. Johannes Widodo. He is the graduate program director in architecture conservation at the National University of Singapore. He's also a founder of MAN, and also he's extremely active in the UNESCO and also the Icomos. So I think we just give the floor to Johannes and let's welcome him.
Thank you. Well, we only have 20 minutes, so it's better to start quick. So may I ask you to share the screen for me, my PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right. So thank you. So I think the theme is quite important because cultural mapping is also related to something else. It's not just for the sake of mapping. Okay, please next. Next slide, please. We need someone to help me to share the screen from there. Yes, okay. So this is the result of the so-called tourism. This is Malacca World Heritage City. Well, it's not just Malacca, but everywhere. That it's become the playing ground of speculations. And the governments all over the world forget that UNESCO is nothing to do with tourism. UNESCO is organizations that focus on education for the sake of culture and science. There's no T there, T means tourism, but is mistakenly taken as a branding opportunity. And the KPI for the most of the state party, although during the submissions to UNESCO always say, yes, we will follow UNESCO mandate for world peace, for whatever educations, but at the end of the day, it's making money. So you can see this kind of development happening everywhere. Next. It's not just that. For example, like even Borobudur Temple, it's a very famous temple in Indonesia, just received a red card warning from UNESCO. Why? Because although the core zone is not touched, well preserved, but the buffer zone is completely transformed into a speculative development for the sake of tourism. And even worse, now it's become the place to sell selfie, for Instagram, for all these youngsters. So the youngster is distracted into visual culture, into consumerism. So the main aim of UNESCO listing of cultural site to be listed into UNESCO for education is totally forgotten. Okay, next. So why we need cultural mapping there? Because exactly it's the same, there's this issue that our cultural environment has become unreadable because of urban redevelopment, population movement, other factors, just like mass tourism and so on. Second, because the relationship between intangible cultural practice and physical space is lost. Everybody just take photos, take selfie, consume, consume, and consume. We can no longer remember the meaning of our heritage. The meaning is lost. And then we need to do cultural memory because we need to regain and retain our cultural memory across generations. I don't like to use the word heritage because heritage is so much focused on things. But I like to use the word inheritance. Inheritance is passing on something from the past to the present generations. We can use it, we can enjoy it, but we cannot destroy it because we need to pass it on to the next generations. And because of this mandate to the next generations, we need to protect, we need to keep natural, cultural, tangible, intangible things that we have now intact for the next generations. That's why mapping is important. Next. So this is basically the diagram that I just simplified. Yes, we are not anti-development. Development is important. Future planning and development is important for the future economy, for everything. So I put it in the dotted line. But that dotted line, the master plan of the future, is superimposed on the present site. And our present site actually consists of layers of memory from recent past and distant past. And sometimes we just think the most important is the future. We just forget everything, and our site is considered as tabula rasa, considered as just white piece of paper. And this is wrong. That's why cultural mapping actually is to look into the layers from present to recent past to distant past, and then to put it into so-called the HUL. And the HUL should be put together into CMP, Conservation Management Plan, and layered together with the master plan of the future. So if there is a conflict between the past and the future plan, then we can activate another instrument called HIA, the Heritage Impact Assessment. And this should become the the legal requirements for all governments who become a member of UNESCO, because all the member of United Nations has signed the agreement actually to accept this, and this is suggested for all, not just UNESCO site, but every significant site in the city can be benefited from this. Next. Well, one of good example is Kyoto. For example, in the city of Kyoto, there are 18 UNESCO World Heritage sites. But if you go to Kyoto, you cannot see any logo of UNESCO. Why? Because they don't need it. Because there is a sense of belonging of people in Japan about the heritage of Kyoto. Additional UNESCO label is something, well, just top up. But basically, they already have the very strong sense of belonging. And long before Kyoto is listed in UNESCO, they already have Kyoto City Landscape Policy, written in 2007. And the aim of that landscape policy is written at the last page of the report. So Kyoto will always remain Kyoto. It's like, so Tainan can remain as Tainan. That is the spirit of inheritance. Okay, next. And this is based on cultural mapping. But the application of cultural mapping can be very extreme. Extreme in terms of whatever wrong should be corrected. And cultural mapping with CMP gives the opportunity to create, for example, to preserve the vista. If the vista is gone, in Kyoto, there is a traditions to light up the tar, the words on the mountain. This has to be viewed from the city. But it's being blocked by the high-rise development. So the city come up with this plan, three-dimensional plan, that in order to make that view visible forever, you need to cut the building height. You need to remove. Then, of course, there is some methods of steps of incentive, of mechanism that can help this to happen. Next. And it's not just about vista, about the landscape, but also about small things, maximum height, height control, view, vista, urban scapes. These things, the intangible part, is become part of the law and regulations. In Japan, it's called machi-chukuri. It's not just simply about master planning or detailed planning or physical planning, but it's about everything. Okay, next. Now, this is an example of how the order attachment restriction is being put in a very plain, simple language. So everybody can see this, everybody can understand this. And then second is the left slide is about the incentive system, that the money comes from the national government, from the Kyoto city, but also from citizen and the enterprise. So it's like a crowdfunding that put together into the development fund, and this development fund is managed transparently, accountability. So the money from there is used to help the conservation and renovations of whatever heritage that is considered as important. Next. Another aspect is the role of the community. So it's not a top-down exercise. It has to be top-down plus bottom-up. And one of very good example is Kawagoe City in Saitama Prefecture. So they come up with so-called the townscape ordinance, law to preserve townscape. But this rule book, there is a 67 guidelines in plain language, not complicated language, from the concept of the city, ideal building, construction, and signboard and everything. And this should be discussed and produced by a council. And this council is community-based council. And this community-based council did the mapping, cultural mapping, because they are local residents. And the member of this council included the member of the city officers, but city officer as the city citizens, not as government. Then there is a social sanctions that will be imposed to someone who goes against this rule. Okay, so they need to consult this council, and this council will give recommendations before the city council give approval of the final design. Next. This is one example. So it's a very interesting city with the Edo Machiya. And if you look into the different building, for example, like the top right corner, This is a new insertion, but it's bounded by the rules of height control, the degrees of the slope of the roof, the height of the facade. It doesn't mean that they stop the so-called the development. Development is necessary, but they have to be respectful to the existing fabric. Next. Another effort that is also very important in relation to creating the economic opportunity is the use of apps. This is my good friend, Esther van Skellenberg. He's based in Hong Kong, but now he's back to Holland. She is an urban planner, an urban designer, but she is also a social enterprise. So in the social enterprise side, she likes to do a cultural mapping together with local NGO and local school. So the content is developed by the locals. Then he put these things into apps, Apple, Android, whatever. And he created a cultural trail connecting the dots that can be done in the neighborhood within 2 hours. And this app is free for download. So they bring young tourism, individual tourists, to come directly into the neighborhood. And then they follow the itinerary and also the narrative that is designed by the local. So it's not imposed by the top. Okay, next. So this is an interesting part, right? So apps is very free. It's called I Discover Asia from different Southeast Asian cities. Number one, reveal the narrative. And you see the hashtag. The hashtag is neighborhood, city spirit, local community. Second, find stories and people and place. Travel like local, inside secrets, authenticity. So that is the hashtag. And then craft walking and cycling itineraries. Wanderlust, travel app, and get lost without getting lost. So it means it's not just going into the prescribed location, but everywhere. And then design a map. And they engage local designer to design a physical map. Local design, apps and map, and support local talents. Okay, next. And the give back to the community. Travel responsibly and shop locally. So all the money goes directly into the local community. Shop local, responsible tourism, and support local businesses. And finally, celebrate living heritage. So the heritage is not frozen heritage. It's not artifact. It's not relics, but it's a living and evolving heritage. And then the hashtag is the spirit of place, social enterprise, and keep heritage alive. I think this approach is very simple and very much closer to the youngster. And it's repeated everywhere. So in Sumatra, in different places, this has become like a movement. And then it's very easy to develop this, to connect conservation and economic development. Next. Next slide. It doesn't move. Okay. So the map is created by locals, designed by locals, powered by locals. The next example, actually, I want to show another bigger enterprise that happened in Korea, and it's called Jeju Ole. And this Jeju Ole is initiated by one girl. And that girl came back to Jeju, and she was very distressed because, you see, all people just go there to take photo because of the Korean drama. It's very beautiful. So she said, what, the beautiful island itself is a UNESCO World Heritage Site with a mountain over there, a volcano. And there's a lot of villages, but the villagers doesn't have economic opportunity. So most of the youngsters moved to the big city. So what she did is did a cultural mapping and created a trail along the island to connect all these villages without cars. So everything is walking. And one walking distance maybe 1 day. So people can stay. And then there's a map of where is the homestay, what is the nice view, what is the nice food, and so on. And she used also maps and worked together with government. And the government really supporting this one. And this is become the biggest place to generate revenue for Korea. So I think this is a kind of things that we can do about the so-called the tourism. Tourism doesn't have to be destroyer, just like what happened in Malacca, just like what happened in Penang. or in China, on different places all over the world. But tourism can be part of the economic development. And this is called sustainable tourism. So sustainable tourism is a combination of ecotourism, responsible tourism, and developmental tourism. So it's community-based tourism. If we talk about industrial heritage, it's the same. Industrial heritage is basically a top-down thing. And sometimes it's in the Asia, it's connected to the imperialism and colonialism, exploitations of the rich, of the resources like sugar, like even cement factory, or even fertilizer, or whatever. It's always related to negative things that happen to the society. Capitalism. Only those who have money, who have the resources, able to get the maximum benefit. But the people was reduced, just like what happened in the early industrial revolutions in Europe. It's become slaves, it's become workers, and the living condition is getting worse. But now, industry changed because of COVID, because of many things. But I think the relic is still there. The relics of this so-called industrial heritage can be part of the so-called the economic developments. But first, I think it's important to reconnect this economic development things with the local community, work on the community level. So I think it's no need to show the slides, the rest of the slide, but we can discuss further about this issue. That number one is everything has to be focused on the community developments. And second, we always have to think about inheritance, something that has to be passed on to the next generations. We have no right actually to destroy, have no right to consume or to make our heritage broken at this moment. And third, UNESCO thing is not really necessary. Yes, it's good to have, but look like what happened in Kyoto. Number one is the ownerships. And then create flow of tourists directly through apps, through whatever, if the aim is really about tourism. And second, most importantly about this UNESCO things, we have a parallel things here in the aim of development of keeping all this alive, history alive, because we need to educate the next generations. We need to pass on to our guests our beauty, our wisdom, our richness of cuisine, of culinary, of lifestyle as a guest. So the visitor have come with respect, and we need to teach them about respect. And I think this is parallel to what the UNESCO want, and you can do it easily in Taiwan without UNESCO. If you can get it, fine. If not, no problem. Thank you. I better stop here.
Okay, thank you very much for Dr. Widodo's presentation. I think it is quite inspiring, particularly I think you mentioned about the concept inherit. I think I totally agree with that. You know, cultural heritage is really the main thing is passed from one generation to next generation. And also it's representing our lifestyle. And I think there are a lot of interesting things. Another key point is the integration of cultural heritage conservation. It's also to relate to the urban development. We must consider them together. It's also quite important for us. Okay, so I think now we move to our next speaker, then later we can have a joint discussion later. Our second speaker is Dr. Faisal. He's the Deputy President of Icomos in Malaysia, and he's also a very active member of Icomos International Cultural Tourism Committee. He also managed a lot of training for the local tourist guide. I think it's coming to the second point about how we can develop cultural tourism. So let's welcome the Faisal.
Okay.
The time is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Lin. Let me just start by sharing my slide first. Okay, can you see my slide? No? Can you see it?
No, it's still blank.
Oops. No, how do I do it? Okay, let's see. Nope. Can you see it now? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lin. Uh, my presentation is actually basically not about a World Heritage Site. It's about how we use cultural mapping, well, community-led cultural mapping to develop cultural tourism in a rural area in Selangor in Malaysia. Well, I'll probably just start by giving a definition of cultural tourism, since we're talking a lot about cultural tourism now. UNWTO says that cultural tourism is a type of tourism activity in which visitors' essential motivation is to learn, discover, experience, and consume cultural attraction and products in a tourism destination. Now, I think this is one definition that actually looks a lot on the visitor's point of view, and probably it lack some of the things that Dr. Widodo was mentioning before, where mass tourism can be a double-edged sword. Yeah, it can be a driver to heritage conservation, but it can also be have a negative impact to cultural heritage. Now, in Icomos, International Cultural Tourism Committee, we actually just recently, last year, approved a new charter called the Icomos International Cultural Heritage Tourism Charter. And in this charter, it says tourism activity in heritage places and destination, including diversity, interdependency of their tangible, intangible, cultural, natural past, and contemporary dimension. This is the definition which is given. And it says there, a well-managed cultural heritage tourism enables community to participate while maintaining their heritage, social cohesion, and cultural practices. Now, to give a little bit of a background, to look at tourism in Malaysia, this is the number. Last year, the number of tourists that arrived in Malaysia is 10 million, but that number is just a recovery number. The actual number in Malaysia is revolve around 25 to 27 million visitors. That makes it one of the top 20 country that receive tourists around the world. But unfortunately, a lot of these tourists are basically mass tourists. You know, people who just consume. And I think very little number of them are actually cultural tourists. Now, last year we had 10 million. And in this state of Selangor, this is the state of Selangor, which I'm going to talk about, the number is 4 million. That means about 40% of the total tourists that arrival in Malaysia comes from this state. And why is this state very popular? Is because it is surrounding Kuala Lumpur, the federal capital. And it's also where the international airport is, and it's also where the port is. So it receives a lot of tourists into Malaysia to the state of Selangor. But Selangor, Malaysia has 6 tentative UNESCO World Heritage Site in the tentative list, and out of the 6, 3 is in Selangor. And I think in Selangor, there is a body called Tourism Selangor that actually wanted to see the rural part of Selangor, although it's the most urbanized state, the rural part of Selangor benefit from the influx from actual tourism. And Tourism Selangor actually looked at 6 districts with rural areas and small towns in Selangor, and wanted to develop, wanted to move away from mass tourism to cultural tourism. And these are some of the objectives that Tourism Selangor wanted to introduce, where they wanted to shift from passive consumer to active participant, to look at authenticity of cultural heritage in its various forms, and to look at distinctiveness of places, of these small rural towns surrounding Kuala Lumpur. I mean, they're not more than 1.5 to 2 hours around Kuala Lumpur. And to do that, I mean, when you want to develop cultural tourism in these areas, one thing that is lacking is what's the tourism product? What is there to actually people to enjoy and to learn from? And one of the things that we did was actually to first identify local community hosts, or what we call local tourist guides. And we use we use the training of this tourist guide to actually develop trails and routes and to become community champions in these small villages and towns. We actually introduced a new training program, and this is actually under the Ministry of Tourism Malaysia, where they actually train guides. And one of the biggest component of this training program is cultural mapping, meaning we train the actual guides to be mappers. I mean, this mapping is not done by professionals. We train the guides to be mappers, and they map it together with local communities. Maybe I just give a little bit of a definition of cultural mapping. Now, from an operational perspective, it's actually collecting, recording, analyzing, and synthesizing information to describe cultural resources, network links, and patterns usage of a given community or groups. Yeah. Maybe I don't have to go through this detail. And why we actually incorporate cultural mapping into our training is because we want to identify cultural assets within the community and create a district cultural map to see what is actually there, and to develop thematic, commercially viable, cultural-based experiential trails. Because for cultural assets, what's important is actually to have a thematic trail that people can go and enjoy and learn. And lastly, to ensure that if tourism comes to this area, there is community involvement in the trail. That means there is some revenue sharing, benefit sharing with local community. And this is how we implement it. It's a 4-month program where the first module, cultural mapping, starts very early and went on throughout the 4 months. And there are other modules like storytelling, visitor service, and entrepreneurship that is incorporated inside. And I just want to run through the methodology that we use. Basically, we go through four main phases. One is framing. Number 2 is to start to do a baseline study. Number 3, to actually do the actual mapping, and finally to develop the actual cultural tourism product. I will just run through very quickly for the rest. Now on framing, I think the first thing that is very important in cultural mapping is to understand why, the what, the who, and the how, to align the project goals and objectives, boundary and scope and outcomes that you want to achieve. The first thing that we went is actually to engage with the stakeholders, and the stakeholders here for the 6 districts are the district councils, the municipal council, to have the buy-ins of the councillors to show how this cultural assets could be well, tourism can be an engine to actually do as an economic tool, and at the same time tourism is actually a tool for heritage conservation. And in framing also, we try to look at areas that are culturally rich, taking into account distance, accessibility to cultural assets, and other amenity. As you know, if you look at mapping of an urban area, things are very close with each other. But in a rural area, things are quite at a distance. To do a trail or to be a route is quite far. And actually, there is a need to actually identify areas or smaller area in the district where there are culturally rich assets. Then we went into identifying the local community for each district to become community hosts, who will act as cultural mappers, trail developers, and local guides and community champion. We have a wide range of students in the community. We actually have a registered town planner or a licensed guide. We also have gardeners and people who are who actually are gardeners or security guards. You know, so the variety of people that we have is a lot. You know, and we actually have to find a way where they can actually work together to do the mapping of their area. The second thing that we do is actually to do a baseline study. This is actually to study the area, the history of the district, the geography, the built environment, land use, stakeholders, and regulation. Maybe one of the things that I want to say is when we ask professionals to do mapping, we actually know, or we actually can identify very quickly what is culture. But I think if you call rural people to become mappers, it'll be quite a challenge because they have a stereotyping idea of what culture is. And defining culture, what we use is from the book called from a book by General Pillay on cultural mapping. As interaction between human and its environment, adaptation, innovation, cooperation, and co-creation. So a group of people live in an environment, and because every environment is different, so they will create or they will see different, or they will create different cultural knowledge and cultural expression. And when a group of people live in a particular environment, the built asset, the settlement patterns and expression will be different based on the area that we live. The social patterns and expressions will be different. And also the livelihood patterns and expression will be different. So there are three main categories that we get these local guides to look at: the built assets, the social assets, and the livelihood assets. One of the things that they start doing is actually to go around this village and to identify culture, whether it's built, whether it's social or economical, and mark it on a particular map. And when they come back, we actually ask them to look at this. We actually ask them to color code them. You see, because some assets need no interpretation. People know about it. It's quite popular. But some require some interpretation. And some will need to have community involvement. And lastly, some will have assets with potential experiential activities. Now, when we color code this, a lot of when they first start doing it, a lot of it is number 1, number 2. And we tell them, can we have number 3 and number 4? And the reason why we want to do this is because we want the mappers to actually engage with local community. You see, to arrive at number 4 requires a lot of time because they need to get to know this the people, and the people need to open up to them. There's ethics about what they want, what consent they want to give, what they want to share, and so on. So as time goes on, the colors move. As and when they go out and they discuss more with the local community, some of them become very, some of it, I mean, they go all the way to now to the green color or number 4. And this is what happens. There is a map that they do, and they color code all the asset based on what I just mentioned before. And then what they do is that they analyze this, and they will see patterns. They will see a particular patterns where, you know, they want to do a food trail from the garden to the table, or they can do a wedding trail, a Malay wedding, a Chinese wedding, and an Indian wedding. So the trail comes after they do this baseline map, and they will see a pattern emerging, and from this pattern is when they develop their thematic trails. This is one example where it's an old small village in Selangor, where they actually look at the historical melting pot, where the 3 major races in Malaysia, people will go on a trail and look at how this melting pot happens. And after they have done it, they actually come out and draw. We actually use a lot of art-based activities. We could use technology, we could use GIS, but we decided not to, because as I said before, some of our map, their levels are very different. Some are very professional, some are really basic people. So by using an art approach, we actually get everybody to can contribute to the actual map development. So finally, this is we get it professionally done. Some maps are just photograph, which they took themselves and they draw themselves. Some maps are very illustrated. The local community will illustrate it themselves. Some are combination of drawings and so on. These are some of the maps that we have done. Okay, maybe I will just go directly to the outcomes of our work. Now, visitors are able to experience cultural trails in small towns and rural areas around Kuala Lumpur. Tourism Selangor and District Council extensively actually market these cultural trails in their promotional material. But I think one more important thing is that it gives a fresh perspective to the District Council and State Tourism Office on the cultural tourism potential in their district. And we see a lot of improvement of infrastructure after that. You know, there was an old clock tower which was actually not used, but because it was mapped, the council actually spend money to upgrade. And there are some places where it's historically very important, but there's no jetty, and they made up a jetty there, so that we see a lot of infrastructure, public facility being improved in the areas that we actually map. So these are some of the examples. This is an island off the port of Klang, where it's a fisherman village. It's an island. The island is there during low tide, but the island disappears at high tide because the whole island will be underwater. Even their mango trees are planted inside huge, big containers. Yeah, and you can see here the guides here with the local community share, and people like to go, especially during COVID or post-COVID. They still cannot travel. A lot of Malaysians discovered that there's a lot of things actually in and around Kuala Lumpur that they miss out. So it's a good time post COVID. This is another one where this is a site of an old palace, because Selangor has a royal family. It has a sultan, and this is an old capital. This is a palace, and there are people actually doing a lot of this traditional music, which they don't practice anymore. But because of our mapping and our local hosts went and talked and discussed, they actually revived back some of this old tradition which has died. And the area is also quite near mangrove, and a lot of their food are using a lot of ingredients from the mangrove forest. Yeah, and we actually start to develop them again. Other things like traditional roof making, which also has died, but because of the mapping, it has been revived again. But of course, it's mainly for tourists to come and learn about traditional palm roof making. And you see here, this is actually shadow puppet. See, in Malaysia, when you talk about shadow puppet, it's always in the East Coast. Never in your that you can see it 1 hour away from Kuala Lumpur. Kuala Lumpur is an urban place, but because of the mapping, they discovered that there is a lot of Javanese, because these are Javanese people who migrated here maybe about 50 or 60 years ago to open up a coconut plantation, and their entertainment a long time ago was shadow puppet. And it was never practiced anymore, but because of the mapping that we done, we highlight this and they start practicing it again. Okay, these are some of the challenges when we actually do mapping, not by professionals, but mapping by local hosts and who leads it and map it together with local community. And one of the things that we see is the challenge is the stereotyping of notions about how to identify cultural assets. You know, they always think that, it has to be nice, big, huge buildings, whereas sometimes a small wooden hut is very significant culturally very significant, and the ability to see that we need to develop. And mappers depends on talents and experience. I've already mentioned this before. And I think lastly, one of the challenge is the time and communication skill to engage with community. Not all community want to share what they have, and there is you need time and communication with the local community. In summary, I just put it here. The art-based community-led cultural mapping methodology that we use has helped these guides to identify and understand the significance of cultural assets and raise the appreciation of cultural heritage. You know, I keep telling them sometimes your wooden house, your traditional wooden house, if you see it as an old wooden house, people will say, I want to demolish it and I want to build a brick house because it's modern, you see. But if you see it as an antique house, it becomes very valuable. So it's just a matter of your perception. You know, heritage is all around them. And it allows them to also have meaningful engagement with local community. At the same time, it becomes a catalyst in strengthening sense and pride of local communities by offering opportunities for them to present their cultural heritage firsthand. This case example that I gave demonstrate how well cultural heritage tourism enables community to participate while maintaining their heritage, social cohesion, and cultural practices. And it provides visitors opportunities for discovery, inclusive enjoyment, and learning experiences. This is in line with the principle of Icomos International Cultural Heritage Tourism Charter that I started off with. Probably I just end my slide by just showing here the 7 principles of the new charter. You can actually go to the link and read the charter as a whole. And maybe I just read it very quickly. The principle number 1 is to place cultural heritage protection and conservation at the center of cultural tourism. It's the other way around. You know, always we see heritage is a tool to attract tourists. Now it's the other way around. We should use tourism to actually to be the tool for cultural conservation. Number 2 is to manage tourism and cultural places through plans informed by carrying capacity. Number 3 is to enhance public awareness and visitors' experience through sensitive interpretation and presentation. Number 4, recognize and reinforce the rights of communities through participatory governance of the heritage commons. 5 is to raise awareness and reinforce cooperation for heritage conservation amongst tourism stakeholders. I think this is very, very important because somehow I operate in an area where it's in between. The cultural heritage people has a particular worldview. The tourism people has a particular worldview, and I sort of like live in the middle. And this conversation between the two stakeholders is quite important. Number 6 is to increase the resilience of communities and cultural heritage through capacity development, risk assessment, strategic planning, and adaptive management. And lastly is to integrate climate action and sustainability measures in the management of cultural tourism and cultural heritage. So I think with that, I thank you, and I hand it over back to Dr. Lim. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for Faisal's very vivid illustration of a cultural map and how efficient it is to apply this, even it's low tech, but to get a very good outcome for the community. It's also echo to what Johannes was saying about the importance of community. It's really excellent. I believe we will have a very good discussion later. So thank you very much for the very well done time controlling for both of our speaker too. Yeah. So now let's come to our third speaker, An Zheng. He's an assistant professor in the Department of Architecture and Interior Design in the Cheng University. And his main presentation will focus on his previous work, which is the Deputy Exclusive Manager of the Foundation of Historical City Conservation and Regeneration in Tainan City. I think will be also a good introduction for Johannes' next trip. Yeah, so let's welcome Anyo. 安佑，你的麦克风没有开，你的麦克风。Your
Okay.
mic.
Esteemed Professor Lin, Professor Widodo, Dr. Faisal, and attendees, good afternoon. It's my privilege to introduce the What If project, which marking the 300th anniversary of Tainan City Walk in 2025. This project represents not just a singular event, but the collective efforts within the foundation of historic city conservation and regeneration. Echoing today's topic, I will highlight the pivotal role of geographic information systems in shaping this initiative. For us, the ultimate goal of applying GIS and maps is to let people locate where they are and settle themselves in the stories, histories, narratives, and discourses. I appreciate the moderator's suggestion that sharing this Taiwanese case in Mandarin would be more effective to attendees. Therefore, I will proceed accordingly. Thank you. 那谢谢这个主办单位，那这个林老师两位讲者，这个学到很多，觉得有很多可以跟古都的经验相互发现的。那也谢谢这个所有的与会者这样子。那今天很荣幸可以来跟大家分享一下古都基金会台南建成300年 What If 这个倡议这样子，以及我们怎么在这一系列的这个行动里头去运用地理资讯系统跟地图。那当然是一边做一边反省一边修正这样子。不过对古都来说，或者对我们来说，运用地图或是 GIS 其实蛮简单的我们就是希望说让尽可能多的人可以在地图上、在历史、在空间、在故事里头找到自己的位置，还有我们跟其他人跟这个环境的一些连结这样子。好，那这个古都基金会成立于1999年那基金会大概我们一直都是这个建筑、空间、历史、文化资产相关的专业者去组成这样子那所以有学界有业界那早期也有公部门，不过我们也一直认为说基金会作为一个第三部门，作为一个 NGO、NPO，应该有一些事情是适合而且应当由第三部门来做这样子。所以在这个大概过去这个将近1/4个世纪古都做的事情大概可以分成这3类文化资产、都市历史环境跟市民社会。那这个文化资产呢，它大概就是文资法相对应的范畴这样子也可以说基金会在这个事情上面，因为作为一个专业者在这个事情上面我们投入了最多的力气这样但是作为一个第三部门我们也觉得说我们更重要的事情好像是这个大于文化资产的关于这个都市历史环境的推动这样子那前面2个比较是这个建成环境一个实体的环境这样子那不过就是作为这个市民社会的一员这样子那我们也有这种比较软性或者比较韧性的这种倡议这样子所以今天介绍这个台南建成300年也是在这个事情下面去提出的。那我今天的这个分享就是会依这3个部分，我稍微用几个例子来说明说那古都在这些不同面向的事情上，我们怎么去运用这个GIS 跟地图这样子好那我想首先这个文资的这个部分我就用这个成员案 这个台湾府城成本及成员产基的这个案子来说明那这个案子是由国立成功大学建筑学系吴秉成教授主持那古都基金会就是共同执行这样子那这个台湾府城的这个城门城墙产基之前分成7处那在2023年的时候正式合并升格为1处所以这个其实给我们一个新的这个观点或者想法，就是说，虽然它或隐或显，但是它实在应该要以一个整体的城墙的观点来想它这样。所以这个案子里头有一个蛮重要的这个先期工作，就是日治时期这个地基图的数位化就是我们用 GIS 去数位化。那这个计划也是由吴秉成老师主持那透过地基图的数位化，其实我们可以得到一个非常接近清代末期的时候，台湾府城的土地使用情况就是像现在这张图，砖红色的就是城墙位置，深灰色是建地，那蓝色就是这个水体这样那地基图这个事情呢，我们在这个成员案里头，我们就把它拿来跟现行的地基图做比对所以像这个左上角这个小北门这个地方大家可以看到红色就是日治时期的这个地基线，所以那个瓮城或者说这个进城路线其实都还看得到但是现行的地基图这个绿色里面其实有一些地块分割已经消失了，像这个是台南公园里头其实城墙就是沿着这个雁潭旁边过去这样子这样。那这个得到这个比较确切的城墙位置之后，我们下一步就是来做个分类，就是说，地下还会不会有东西这样子？所以像这个小北门，它现在是有一座天桥这样子，那可能底下还有东西那像这个2这个地方，它现在还有一小段，但是它还没列入这个文资的公告范围，所以大家也可以想象，就是之后可能会一直挖，一直出现。对不对？这样，但是都没关系，就是因为现在我们就是把它归到一个完整的城墙、城池来想它，这样。那台南公园这一段里头现在做了一个装置艺术这样子。那这个红色这一段是当初这个道路工程报告书就说也没挖到东西不过绿色这一段这个进到成功大学里头那当年在盖这个建筑物的时候就已经预设说，将来可能会开挖所以这个地方现在是一个脚踏车车棚。就是说，留下一个这个揭露的这个机会，这样子那这个这个建筑就做这个建筑设计这样子这样GIS 它确实是一个在整合各类的资讯的时候非常有效率的工具像是这边左上角可以看到你的使用分区你的土地使用现况、你的所有权包括刚才说的地基线，大概它是一个很好用的工具这样子。那有这些资料所以这个学生设计课他们就把这个这个天桥改成一个瓮城的形状这样子。那如果你现在站在这个天桥上往城内看，其实你会很强烈的感觉到这里仍然是一个进出台南城市的一个重要通道这样所以像左下这张这个照片，建号指的这一条路就是以前这个进城的路径这样所以最近古都办走读，我们蛮喜欢从这里开始走的这样子，就是从城外一路走进去这样子这样那这个城墙边有很多学校，所以这个天桥的另外一端是一所国中，所以我们这个学生也把它跟人行道校园空间做了一个整体的规划这样子。那这个当然城不会只有那一圈城墙，它更重要的可能是这个城内城外的这些内涵这样子这样。不过大家应该也都可以想象得到，就是很多老房子，但是绝大多数都不会有文资身份，可是他们却是要构成这个都市历史环境的时候非常重要的东西这样子。所以像基金会2008年的时候这个老屋新力运动就是说比起规范性的事情也许面对这些老屋我们用一种鼓励性质的你让他觉得有利可图有意义可图，那大家会比较有一个动机说那我应该怎么好好的把它保留下来，好好的再利用好好的做一个设计这样子这样。不过面对这么多这些 有文资潜力但是大概只有少数会真正成为文资的这些具文化资源潜力标的。那我们后来也跟市政府委托做了一个普查那也是用这个 GIS 这样子。那这个其实公部门非常早就开始就是注意到会有很多类这样子的事情，所以大概在台南县市已经做了20多年这样。那古都大概这个前前后后都有参与所以我们累积了不少的经验那在2021年到2023年这次的追踪普查，我们就是引入这个GIS 这样跟过去的纸本对照，所以大家可以想象其实当那个数量一多的时候，纸本其实要维护是非常困难但相对来说 GIS 它会很直接像这样这个是我们 GIS 初步的一个界面呈现这样子那在这一次的这个普查里头，我们也结合其他的资料像是这个右下角这个家屋户顺手账那就是日治时期的屋籍啦这样子。所以像这个右上角这一张这个苏氏五间厝它是文化资产没问题因为它确实就很美这样子那它在这个圆环边上其实它的设计也反映了它在都市里头的一个区位，它有点侧身隐身在这个圆环边这样子。但是你透过资料你可以发现说在它旁边的这个街屋这个药局，甚至是它对面一样在圆环对面的这个只要我长大这个精品屋，其实他们都是同一批他们是在类似的社会文化条件下去盖出来的街屋这样。所以虽然后面两者它大概不太有机会成为文化资产，但是很明显如果我们要留住这个历史环境的一些特质的时候，那这些房子应该要被看到，应该要被知道这样子这样。所以这个大概是我们用 GIS 的一个过程这样。但是不管是文资法的范畴还是行政上的量能上，其实这一批潜力的这个老房子数量都太多了这样。可是就基金会的立场，我们作为一个第三部门，那我们总是觉得说既然我都知道了，我好像就来做点什么这样子虽然我们能够做的真的不多啦这样所以我们就培训了一个志工这样子我们就培训一起的志工说那我们来这个发展看看这个方法就是说你就帮我们去看看这个房子现在怎么样那像这个也是5间厝它这个街廓就在那个海岸路的旁边这个大家都已经经过它，但是它在非常深的地方，就是当初第一次到的时候也是觉得有点感动这样，就是在台南也蛮多年，从文资到劳务心力到走到这个街廓深处这样子，就觉得还蛮好的这样子这样。那志工这个事情古都大概我们从2015年的时候开始定期我们每年会有一期的志工，那就是有培训课程跟招募然后就我们就是一些主题然后去做调查这样子那这里也非常感谢志工无私的奉献这样子这样那大概是有这么多的这些事情这样，所以在这些事情的基础上，那基金会去提出这个台南建成300年的这个倡议这样子那当然这个我们对这个倡议我们有一些好像是核心的观念这个 cultural resilience 就是说这个历史环境它是不是真的给了我们一些什么支持让不管是个人的还是社会群体我们去度过一些困难这样子这样。不过今天主要还是讲这个GIS 跟地图的应用这样子所以前面说的这些事都比较是基金会内部的专业实践，但是这种倡议的事情它其实是外向，就是它是向外这样子，所以其实蛮不一样这样。那这个向外至少好像有2个层次，一个是这种社群 community， 一个是大众，就是你不知道他是谁这样子那社群其实现在样貌也很多这个高国中小的老师那社造现在也有个人型社区型这样子，那比较新的好像是影展市集这个电影节、音乐季这样子其实现在社群的样貌非常多这样子。那这个大概去年年底的时候，这个文化局也就来揪团就对了他就找了大概10来个长期在台南耕耘的个人或是团体那就是说那大家一起来想想看说， 接下来谈谈要做什么，要怎么做。那这个事情最后就是大家就是做出几本这个白皮书啊，行动白皮书，就是我左边列的这个几个名字这样。大家可以看到非常的广泛就是那个，而且确实很有趣这样子这样。那不过我觉得那个发展也蛮好，就是后来大家觉得，就是这些团体的人，大家觉得说，有点不想只是交一个报告书就是说，那就决定说，那大家自己来，就是自己中进、自己中浪那样，就是我们来自办一个市民论坛这样子当然公部门在这整个过程里头，他们是非常积极的参与跟对话这样子这样。那在这么多的倡议里头，就是几乎所有的人都想要一个平台可是你再继续问下去，所有人的平台的内涵都不一样。有的人想要的是资料库，有的人想要的是人才跟资源资讯的交换，有的人想要的是说我有一个提议倡议跟社会一体讨论的平台这样子那就这个基金会来说，其实我们也就是从基本面开始，所有的事情大概都会落在空间上面所以我们就从我们擅长的就是做地图这个事情开始来做起这样子慢慢就先做了再说这样子慢慢把这些大家觉得需要交换的资讯做到这个地图上面来这样子。那这个刚才也是面对社群的部分，那面对大众的部分，其实因为古都我们就喜欢散步嘛这样子，所以我们就想说那这个城墙这个事情就来办个走读吧，我们就来绕城墙一圈这样子这样那因为你面对大众所以我们就把这些资讯就是做成这个地图那也是一个学习单的形式，所以这上面有这个城墙的位置有城墙周边的学校有这个水系有这个水文还有一些这个地标跟这个路径这样子如果现在是现场分享的话，我就会把我的小奖品拿出来这样子给大家猜猜看说那个走城墙一圈要几公里这样子，大家可以用那个人走路的时速去猜猜看这样子也很希望大家来台南就真的来古都看看这样子。不过就是后来觉得做这个学习单走读地图这个事情真的蛮搭的，就是说跟那个走读的节奏蛮搭的。你确实能够慢慢走，然后慢慢比对，然后慢慢去填这个学习单这样。不过确实它里头也有这个不容易的地方，像是底下最下面这张照片，其实蛮难拿捏，我们也一直在学说怎么做你可以让这张学习单面对不同的年龄层。甚至是面对说他本身对这个历史熟悉程度不一的人你要怎么让他在一次的走读里头他大概能够达到一个效果这样子，这个我们还在努力这样子。那我想这个今天很快就是从这个文化资产到都市历史环境到市民社会我们的一个初步的想法就是现在的这些工具都很方便就是 Google Map 这样子那我们也是都去鼓励大家，就是说你就来做你自己的调查，你甚至不用靠 NGO 你自己就可以做你想要做的调查，那累积下来就是有这样子，那就长期去做这样所以基金会我们自己的想法也是这样那第二个就是说这个社群网络的部分现在这些工具软体，不管是内政部的 Icomos 还是说其他一些平台这样子协作这个事情变得很容易。这样子所以你其实我们也都没想很多啦就是说其实光是协作一个事情它本身就已经有它的这个社群网络市民社会的意义在了这样子那最后当然还是回到这个报告一开始就是说我们做这些事其实初衷就是觉得希望让尽可能多的人你可以在地图在故事里头都找到自己在哪里找到自己跟这个其他人跟这个环境的一些连接这样子那以上是这个古都非常粗浅的这个反省跟分享，谢谢。
Okay, thank you very much for Anyo's presentation. I think we can also see how do you apply all this GIS and mapping system to help the conservation of a historical environment in Tainan, and also the involvement with community. It's excellent. Yeah. Okay, so now we can start with our discussion. Yeah. So I think we collect some questions on our chat box. Yeah. So I don't know how to, it's okay. Maybe I just read through some of them. I think the first question is more more general, and is talk about if the cultural heritage site is listed for the World Heritage Tentative List, would it be possible or easier to prevent the site from economic urban development? And the second one is how is the balance maintained between promoting tourism and preventing the integrity of the World Heritage Site? Okay, I think these two, I don't know, is perhaps Dr. Widodo can help us.
Yes, actually, that question is up here in Facebook. I just answered a long answer in Facebook just now.
Yeah.
But,
Oh,
I
okay.
think in principle, I think the understanding about the UNESCO World Heritage either is a tentative list or listing is initiated by state party. So it's not initiated by UNESCO. It means it's like marriage. So it means that you come up together and then you say you promise, I will keep this family together. I will keep this place forever for our next generations to the world. Then UNESCO, if they approve this and put it on the list, it means that, okay, let's monitor, let's see how the state party able to fulfill the promise. But most of the time, not all, state party forget about this promise in the marriage. They start to sell the house. They start to make the house like a disco or nightclubs because they want to get money. And that is creating this problem because UNESCO is saying, okay, you don't keep your promise, so we will delist you. So it's possible to put it in endangered list or the list because the state party doesn't fulfill the promise. So now it's up to the state party, either the central government or local government, to put up mechanism like HUL, like the historic urban landscape, like the heritage impact assessment, all the mechanisms, legal mechanism to keep the property intact. Right? So how to do that? Then it depends on how is there the government is trustworthy, is the government, the state party is corrupted or not corrupted, whether the state party able to keep the promise and have the right mindset. So it very much depends on the locals and the national level, not depends on UNESCO.
Yeah, I think what you say is quite relevant to what you are talking about in the Kyoto example also, because they already have their own landscape policy, right?
Yes.
So they even doesn't need extra regulation in terms of conserve their cityscape. So I think it's quite a good example. How about Faisal? Do you have any comment on that? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I just want to comment on the pressure of tourism into World Heritage Sites, because the two World Heritage Sites of Malaysia is very, very heavily impacted by tourism. And I think it's not just the amount of tourists that comes, the carrying capacity, but also this idea of that area becomes very touristy. You know, once upon a time, there's a lot of traditional trades and traditional living, but now it just becomes hotel, souvenir shop, cafe, hotel, souvenir shop, cafe. You know, it's that has happened because of maybe the economic valuation of the place goes up, and a lot of these people used to rent at very cheap price, because a lot of our sites, well, once upon a time was the most rundown part of Malacca or Penang, and prices were low. and this has happened. We do have a conservation management plan put in place for both properties. However, it's only to manage the building. You know, whether there is a law to manage the type of activity, it's lacking in the conservation management plan. It's only mainly on the tangible part, but the control on activities, I think, is a bit lacking. That's one. The second thing is on tourism, because I also come from the tourism sector. I think this conversation between the tourism sector and the heritage conservation sector needs to happen, because I don't believe that the tourism people just want to go about unsustainably, but probably that conversation and the needs of both parties needs to be put down on the table. That's where the new Icomos Cultural Tourism Charter says that conservation should be at the heart of tourism planning, not the other way around. Not tourism, not heritage is a resource for tourism. It's not. It should be the other way around. And I think this can be achieved through proper conversation and cooperation between two sectors. Because I've always seen, I sit in this, because I come from the tourism side, I sit in the middle, you know, between these two different stakeholders that has two different worldview and two different objectives. But however, if you look at it from sustainable development, probably that you should find a middle ground. Yeah. So I'm still positive.
Yeah, so I think the cultural mapping, the way you just explained, might be how to say, a very successful way to bring up the awareness of the community. And it's also like what Widodo is doing, because I think all these kind of historical city, they are facing similar, you can call it a gentrification or touristic development. Is Anyo want to put any comment on that?
Maybe I could provide something we are just acting. Yeah, actually, the foundation, we have a quite long-term cooperation with the academia and the local government. So in this project, there is a part is about a initiation to the local government on the low on the conservation low level, or like a administrative unit, yeah, between the third sector and the public sector. Yeah. But I would say it depends. I would say this initiation is based on, you know, not long-term, almost 20 years cooperation. Not only it's not just one project or a 2-year event. Yeah, so I would say there are lots of details in the actual operation. Yeah, and we are
well, I think we
working
need
hard
to
on.
live. We need to live long and patient to wait for
Live
something.
long.
But I think when I listen to any presentations for GIS, walking tour, creating trails, I think that is the immediate things that very practical that can be done to create cultural trails. And also maybe my examples about the I Discover Asia, to use apps to bring tourists to explore on the different areas, not just a prescribed tourism, but also the importance of GIS in the so-called empowerment. Because this makes the things on the map actually is become like economic potentials. And as we know, cultural trail and also events like festivals is very powerful, like the Bao'an Cultural Festival.
Yes, that's right.
It from local activities initiated by Bao'an Kung and the Confucius Temple. But then everybody is getting involved. So the entire district become very much alive, and it's generated a lot of economic activities, and it's become a national destinations for tourism, right? And without sacrificing so-called authenticity, because If there is no tourists, it's fine because it's still, they have to do the religious and ceremonies as well, right? But by making this as part of the cultural trail and expand it into a different part of the town, we can reactivate the entire city. I think there's a very important roles of the GIS things because GIS is helping to do this mapping and also inventory, but not just the contemporary present GIS, but we also need historical GIS.
Yeah, different layers.
And then 3D GIS. I mean, to see the contour, when we make a sections, which part of the city that the vista is blocked, just like the example in Kyoto. Because plan doesn't say anything, it's without saying, you know, but the sections that show the height of the mountain, height of the buildings, is extremely important. So I think in the local terminology now is called the digital twin. Yeah? Not just simply a GIS, but also digital twin of the city.
Yeah. That's right. I think we were getting more and more apps or different programs which we can use. I also recently just encountered the Ticos and the ArcGIS, because then you can use it to have this cooperative mapping together. Yeah, so I think this is quite a useful way today, which we are talking. And I just have a question for Johannes. You are talking about this iDiscovery app, but I didn't, because it didn't get too much detail. I'm just wondering who is using it and how popular it is, and how do you distribute this concept idea for the people? Yeah.
Well, it's basically it's internet apps. So it's promoted through Instagram, promoted through Facebook, and basically everybody can then download this. And if you look into the statistic, it's more than, I think, 50,000 downloads already. And the download is coming from all over the world. It's not just focused on one certain regions. But the only problem, of course, is it's not universal, right? Because in English. And the system is only work on the non-China system. So if you want to engage tourists from China, then you need a different platform because Google doesn't work. WhatsApp doesn't work. All this Instagram doesn't work. And that is the problem, that we don't have this universal kind of platform. But the Jeju Ole, as example, is use a traditional website that is more accessible to everyone. So, but I think the most important thing about the iDiscovery, the app's approach, is the way they do the mapping itself. Because when they did the mapping, it's just like Faisal explained. It's the involvement of everybody, the NGOs, everyone. And this is sometimes the mistakes about the understanding of HUL. Because HUL is done by expert, by consultant, and which is wrong. And HUL shouldn't be done by government because it's conflict of interest. So it has to be done by a neutral organization. So the best example of this neutral organization, like Ballarat, if you go to HUL Ballarat, it's an organization, but it's also supported by government, supported by academia, and the content is exactly about everything. So the mapping is done as a tool for empowerment. And the app itself can be outdated, but if this belong to the community, every youngster in the neighborhood can develop their own apps based on the same database, based on the same GIS, so whatever. So database should be democratized, not controlled, but it's open source.
Yeah. I think this is getting more and open. It's a good direction to go. Yeah. How about Faisal? I think we have some question. There are some people asking about what are some challenges training the mappers. Do they have someone to facilitate? If you have any question, I don't know. Can you answer about this question?
Yeah.
Or in your experience, of course. Yeah.
I think, as I said before, when we call local communities, they come from varied backgrounds. Some have very high education, but some may not. and their notion of what culture is may differ from one of them over the other. That's why a lot of mentoring is done. A lot of our trainers are always on the ground when they are doing the actual mapping, because at the end of the day, they not only become guides, but they become the community champion. They draw the people. They bring the community together. And you know, in Malaysia, as you know, maybe we are multicultural. We have the Chinese community, the Indian community, and the Malay community living side by side. We have no assimilation. We only have integration. They all live in their own little quarters and little enclaves in some areas. And I think the how to say the suspicious between the races are still there. But I think doing this mapping together builds the social cohesion. So now we have Chinese people now comfortable walking into a mosque and talking to the imam, and a Malay comfortable walking into temples and explaining about the different deities and gods. I think this needs to be, as I said, mentored, because their level is quite different. They see things differently. Yeah.
That's very good. I think really the cultural heritage is to help us to understand each other is the key point for that. Yeah.
Yes.
And how about in terms of the technique part? Is Angel or Johannes has any experience on this kind of mapping difficulties or facilities?
Well, normally I use this cultural mapping in workshop, whatever, and I said, okay, just use the cheapest one, $0, which is Google My Map. Yeah, Google My Map. It's just a good pin, and on that pin they put the title and then link to the cloud. The cloud can be video, can be recording, or everything.
Yeah.
Right? And then walk every street, talk to every people. Yeah, and then try to be neutral. I mean, don't try to analyze and edit the information, but put everything first on the database. And when you finish, well, it's never finished, but if you think that you want to produce something, let's sit together, do the focus group discussions, invited all the stakeholders, and start changing the color of the pin. So say, if it's red, then it's internationally, globally significant, maybe. If it's yellow, then it's nationally significant. If it's green, it's locally significant. And then have to be this kind of conversations. So everybody have to make a decisions of what color in this. And you can put this into a map, a more proper GIS map, or whatever on Google, because somebody can just do some programming, right? So I did this with the Malacca Infect project. The Malacca Infect project, actually the money is gone, so we cannot keep the database alive. But the mapping itself is still intact. So everybody actually can contribute to the editor by typing, oh, this is wrong, this is new information. And then you can do use this as kind of a platform for discussions. Right? Keep this alive. So if this is become like the ownership is not controlled by government, the ownership is controlled by neutral party, coalitions, or like Hul Balarat or whatever, this can be a very powerful democratic platform. And it's cost zero. What we need is volunteer. There's no shortage of volunteer youngsters who can do coding to do something with with Google Map, right? Because it's open source. I think that is the way to go.
Yeah, I think it's also quite similar. Like my current project, we are doing Taiwan's cultural roots. So how do we identify the important things on the roots, and how do we make the story based on this? So I think maybe we should have a workshop one day in Taiwan that we can work together for our extension seminars. So how about Anyo? Do you want to give some comments for that?
About the online map, about the Google Map. There are 2 points. The first one is for us, we provide some open resources like like the location of the city wall, and then there are several groups and individuals. They just told us if we apply this open data and do their own tour or works. Yeah, so I think FHCCR, we would be like to be such kind of a role to provide some content, the basic information to the whole civil society. Yeah. And second point is that we start to cooperate with teachers, yeah, to develop some official teaching project for them to apply in their lessons, because loading of teachers are very heavy. Yeah, they barely have leisure time to do extra teaching training or something. So I would say it's necessary, but very difficult, especially in Taiwan. Yeah, but we start to have a long-term discussion and workshop with especially the elementary school teachers, yeah, to develop the educational project, like the materials, like the trail road, like the well, combined with the other subject like math, chemical, geography, such. Yeah, I think that's the two direction the FHCCR take. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. I think this is what I would like to know as well. I think, I don't know, this cultural mapping methodology actually also can consider to use in a school group. Yeah, as Anyu just mentioned, from a primary school. And I also noticed that in National Cheng University, for their first year freshmen, they also has a kind of general course which you need to explore the city of Tainan. So are you involved with that program?
Part of them, yeah.
Part of it, yeah.
In Siak, a small town in Sumatra, there is a Facebook group called Heritage Heroes. And basically, this is 6 students from planology, planning, and then architects and graphic designers. They work together to create activities like cycling. You mean cycling is very popular nowadays, and the people going cycling for 2 or 3 hours, and they lead them into less known areas, and then ask them to map. So it's a mapping exercise by using these activities. And it's many activities. You can work together with primary school kids to do the summer course, and then with women organizations, with religious organizations, with people who like cycling. And in the terms of the school program, I have several experience in Japan. And University of Tokyo have a neighborhood, right? So the students from one laboratory actually become the facilitator during the summer program to do a program called Knowing Your Neighbors. So in the neighborhood, and then they ask the kids actually to do the interviews, and we work out with the narrative. Let's find a ghost. Let's find bomb. Let's find colors. You know, it's a simple that student can be understood. But then they start to do the mapping, simple mapping, and then talk to the locals. Ghost, for example, is like the fire on the house, so there's a ruins. So they ask around what happened to this house. Is there any ghost? You know, and this is a kind of a training from very young to give the sense of ownership to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So actually, the mapping, the methodology is no-brainy one. Yeah. We can have a very simple methodology to the top methodology, but most importantly is that data is open to public, to everyone, like Wikipedia. Everybody can suggest an additions. And there is a team, neutral team that control the content. But it's supposed to be neutral, not belong to a powerful party, especially the state party.
Yeah, so it's just like Faisal was talking also, this help with this kind of more rural village or community that actually can have something to share with city people. Yeah. So I think Very good. And thank you very much for three of you as our speaker. And I think we all learn a lot from your expertise. And I will say it's quite successful in terms of discuss about the meaning of the cultural mapping. And we have all the different application and all the possibility for the community awareness and empowerment. So I think I should close our section here for today. And I'm looking forward to have a next seminar. Perhaps you can also join us as well. Okay, so thank you, Johannes, and thank you, Faisal, and thank you for Anyo.
The session ends with a group photo.
Ah,
So please smile at the camera. Thank you. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Cheese. Okay, perfect.
Okay, thank you, Annie, for your
Thank
help,
you.
and thank you, Jennifer, for your translation. Yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you
Thank
all.
you very much.
Yeah, bye-bye. Have a nice day.